بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته، وأسعد الله مساءكم جميعا بكل خير. القضاء على الإرهاب لن يتحقق إلا بتضافر الجهود من قبل كل مكونات المجتمع والعالم، سواء كانت حكومات، منظمات دولية، المؤسسات والجامعات والمراكز والشعوب، وذلك من خلال التصدي للجذور والأسباب والعوامل المساعدة لنشوء واستمرار الإرهاب والتطرف. وعقد هذه الندوة الخاصة يعد إحدى هذه الجهود الهامة، حيث يتواجد معنا شخصيات لها أثرها وتأثيرها وأثرت هذا المجال. أولاً، حكومة المملكة العربية السعودية ممثلة في معالي السفير المندوب الدائم للمملكة لدى الأمم المتحدة المهندس عبد الله بن يحيى المعلمي، رئيس المجلس الاستشاري لمركز الأمم المتحدة لمكافحة الإرهاب، رئيس لجنة الإرهاب بمنظمة التعاون الإسلامي. ثانياً، مؤسسة وجامعة ممثلة في معالي الدكتور عبد المجيد بن عبد الله البنيان، رئيس جامعة نايف للعلوم الأمنية العربية للعلوم الأمنية. وأخيراً، منظمة الأمم المتحدة ممثلة في سعادة السفير السيد فلاديمير فورونكوف، وكيل الأمين العام للأمم المتحدة لمكافحة الإرهاب، المدير التنفيذي لمركز الأمم المتحدة لمكافحة الإرهاب، والسيد الدكتور جهانجير خان، مدير مركز الأمم المتحدة لمكافحة الإرهاب. وقبل أن نبدأ الندوة، أود تقديم الشكر الجزيل لمعالي رئيس الجامعة والزملاء الأعزاء، ونستهل هذه الندوة بكلمة ترحيبية لمعالي رئيس الجامعة، فليتفضل مشكورا. تفضل.
شكرا أخي مجيد. الحقيقة بداية أرحب باسمي وباسم زملائي أعضاء هيئة التدريس والطلاب والطالبات في جامعة نايف العربية للعلوم الأمنية بضيوفنا الكرام الذين نسعد بهم اليوم، ونسعد بتواجدهم بيننا السيد فلاديمير فورونكوف، وكيل الأمين العام للأمم المتحدة لمكتب مكافحة الإرهاب، معالي السفير عبد الله بن يحيى المعلمي، المندوب الدائم للمملكة العربية السعودية لدى الأمم المتحدة ورئيس المجلس الاستشاري لمركز الأمم المتحدة لمكافحة الإرهاب، والدكتور جهانجير خان المشرف على مكتب الأمم المتحدة لمكافحة الإرهاب. سعيدين جدا بتواجدكم اليوم وفخورين بهذا التواجد، وسعيدين أيضا بأن هذا المحاضرة اليوم أو المجموعة المتحدثين نطلق من خلالهم بإذن الله سلسلة محاضرات جامعة نايف العربية للعلوم الأمنية لهذا العام الدراسي. لا أود أن أطيل، مرة أخرى أرحب بالجميع وسعيدين بهذا التواجد، ونتمنى إن شاء الله أن تكون هذه الزيارة إن شاء الله مفيدة للجانبين، وشكرا جزيلا.
شكرا، الله يحفظكم. الآن أعطي الكلمة لمعالي المندوب الدائم، فليتفضل مشكورا. تفضل، الله يسلمك.
بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا رسول الله. أيها الإخوة والأخوات، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. إنه من دواعي سروري أن أكون معكم هذا اليوم، ويسعدني أن أتقدم بالشكر الجزيل إلى معالي الدكتور عبد المجيد البنيان، جزاه الله خير على حسن الاستقبال وعلى ترتيب هذا اللقاء. أنا أعتقد أن اللقاء مع منسوبي جامعة نايف الأمنية هو من أهم اللقاءات، لأنكم تمثلون نخبة الشباب العربي في كثير من القطاعات، ولأنكم تعنون بقضايا الأمن والتنمية، وهي القضايا التي تشكل تحديات عميقة للأمة العربية بأجمعها، وتحظى بالاهتمام الكبير من قيادة المملكة العربية السعودية والمسؤولين فيها. هذا المركز، مركز الأمم المتحدة لمكافحة الإرهاب، هو تعبير عن القناعة لدى قيادة المملكة، بدءا من الملك عبد الله يرحمه الله، ثم جلالة الملك سلمان خادم الحرمين الشريفين وسمو ولي عهده، إيمانهم العميق بأن الإرهاب ومكافحته مسألة دولية تتطلب تعاونا جماعيا وتتطلب معالجة متعددة المناحي ومتعددة الأبعاد. فالإرهاب لا يمكن أن يقمع فقط بالمعالجة الأمنية، وإنما لابد من اجتثاث جذوره عن طريق المعالجة الفكرية والعقدية والمعالجة الاقتصادية والتنموية والاجتماعية. وهذا هو المنطلق الذي يعمل من خلاله مركز مكافحة الإرهاب في محاولة لتجييش القدرات الدولية والتنسيق فيما بينها حتى نتمكن من العمل يدا واحدة وجهدا مشتركا نحو تحقيق هدف عالم خالي بإذن الله من الإرهاب. حتى وإن طال أمد تنفيذ هذه الرؤية، فإنها تظل رؤيتنا جميعا وتظل الدافع الذي ننطلق من أجله. مرة أخرى أشكر معالي رئيس الجامعة على ترتيبه هذا اللقاء واستضافته له، وأشكركم جميعا على حضوركم ومشاركتكم واستجابتكم، وشكرا لكم.
شكرا، الله يحفظكم. والآن أعطي الكلمة لسعادة السفير الوكيل السيد فورونكوف. Please.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. First of all, it's a great pleasure to be here. I'm second time in the university, and each time I'm visiting university, I can see these changes. The university is still developing, and I think it's a very good indication that counterterrorism agenda is very high in the national agenda of Saudi Arabia, and I'm very grateful to this country for very strong support of the activities of United Nations Counterterrorism Center, which was established by the initiative of the Saudi Arabia, and still we have very intensive, very strategic dialogue on different shades of counterterrorism agenda. I will make my official statement now, and then, of course, I will be ready to answer your questions. Excellencies, distinguished participants, dear students, first of all, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to His Excellency, Dr. Abdul Majid bin Abdullah Al Banyan, for his kind invitation to your prestigious university, and His Excellency Ambassador Al-Mualami, permanent representative of Saudi Arabia to the United Nations in New York, a good friend of mine. We are working closely about every day on this counterterrorism agenda. I'm very grateful for their outstanding support for UN Counterterrorist Center. And as you know, Mr. Ambassador Al-Mualami is also the chairman of advisory board of United Nations Counterterrorist Center, which creates a framework for the activities of the center. So again, Ambassador, thank you very much for your support and engagement. I just had a meeting with the president of the university, and I'm deeply impressed by the outstanding training, education, and research on security matters that you are involved in. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and to exchange our views. Today, we commemorate the 18th anniversary of the horrendous attacks of September 11, 2001. Since then, we have witnessed countless terrorist attacks all over the world, which remain a major threat to international peace and security. During the last 5 years, more than 105 countries were attacked by terrorists. I think terrorism is really a very difficult challenge but we need to address this challenge effectively. Since this terrorist attack in September 11, we have better understanding how to deal with this scourge, because terrorism exacerbates conflicts, destabilizes entire regions, and hinders economic development. It's a complex global challenge that affects not only Saudi Arabia, but all the countries around the globe. This is a real global scourge, and we need to act against this scourge globally. Only this is the prerequisite of the final success. The nature of the threat is constantly changing as terrorist groups adapt their tactics in response to strengthen counter-terrorist capacities at global, regional, and national levels. New technologies, social media, and the flow of information, people, and money across borders, all these new dimensions to terrorist threat. And I think we need to be ahead of terrorists at least one step. And this is, I think, very important task for scientific society, to be predictable, to be organized in the manner, to propose recipes which could help us to stop terrorist migration. At the core of the terrorist threat, ISIL-Daesh remains a critical concern. Despite its territorial defeat last year, the group still aspires to global relevance, in particular through its affiliates and inspired attacks. Al-Qaeda also remains resilient, and its affiliates are in fact stronger than Daesh counterparts in Syria's Idlib province, Yemen, Somalia, and much in West Africa. Moreover, as we saw in Christchurch in March and elsewhere, the growing threat from far-right and supremacist terrorist groups and individuals also poses severe risk to many countries. And this is a new type of threat. We should take care about this part of work also. The transnational nature of terrorism means that there is a continuous need for strengthened multilateral cooperation to address this threat. And I could assure you that despite all the differences in the United Nations on different issues, counterterrorism is an issue that unites countries. Recently we had the report of the Secretary General about ISIS-Daesh threat to the international peace and security. And I was positively impressed by very high level of unity expressed by all 15 members of the Security Council, expressing very strong support of counterterrorism activities of my office. So I think this is the important agenda, which is not only designed for counterterrorism, but also for better atmosphere, for better understanding among member states with regard to the global security issues. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has always been a staunch supporter of international cooperation to countering terrorism, as has taken a leadership role in promoting the United Nations as a natural place for the countries of the world to come together to address the scourge of terrorism. This is best reflected in the leadership role of Saudi Arabia in establishment in September 2011 of the United Nations Counter-Terrorism Center, known as UNCCT, based on a vision of the late custodian of two holy mosques, King Abdullah bin Abdulaziz Al Saud, and through an initial contribution of $10 million and a subsequent contribution of $100 million in 2014 from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to promote international counterterrorist cooperation and support member states in the implementation of the global counterterrorist strategy. This very generous contribution enables much-needed international counterterrorist capacity building assistance by the United Nations Counterterrorist Center. The center is now strategically placed within the United Nations Office of Counterterrorism, which was established by the General Assembly in 2017 to provide leadership on counterterrorism and to enhance coordination and coherence across the United Nations system to ensure the balanced implementation of the United Nations global counterterrorism strategy. But speaking absolutely frankly, I think the contribution of Saudi Arabia to the establishment of this Office of Counterterrorism is enormous, because it was the idea of the Saudi side to have this office in the Secretariat of the United Nations. It was the idea, first of all, implemented by creation of United Nations Counterterrorist Center, and the center is the custodian of this tradition in the activities of the United Nations. And now this is the next stage of development when the office has been established and we have this coordinating role in the whole system. And I can tell you that more than 40 entities of the United Nations are doing different shades of countering terrorism. So our coordinating role as an office is very important, but the significant role of the United Nations Counterterrorist Center is still in place, and it is developing very fast, because having no tool to implement the political decisions, having no possibility to engage these practitioners through the center to the political discussions, it means not to be effective. Because of that, center is playing a role of capacity building activities, and this is also a very strong intellectual body inside the office, which is producing a lot of new, fresh ideas how to tackle better the scourge of terrorism. So I'm very grateful, again, for the establishment of the center in 2011, and the center is advancing in a very fast manner, and this is also the personal contribution of the ambassador Al-Mualami, because he's taking care about every day how the center is working, and I'm very grateful for him for that, because it's a real support. It's a real support. When establishing the office, the General Assembly recognized specifically the important work carried out by the United Nations Counterterrorist Center. I was honored to be appointed as the executive director of the United Nations Counterterrorist Center when I assumed my function as the United Nations Under-Secretary General for Counterterrorism. Thanks to the Saudi Arabian generous contribution, which served as a great catalyst and helped the United Nations to mobilize additional 30 donors, and thanks to the strong support from the center, the United Nations counterterrorism activity in support of the member states are enhancing in a very fast manner. In our work, we are guided by the United Nations Counterterrorism Advisory Board, which consists of 21 member states and the European Union as observer. So we managed to mobilize financial resources. Now it's 30 contributors to our budget. And we are working in a collective member with the leading member states. And the advisory board was created and designed for this coordination. And I think it's the main body which provides us with political guidance, what should be done in the next stages. Of course, I'm not speaking about this general political framework of General Assembly and Security Council, but speaking about practical activities, of course, the advice from the advisory board is of crucial importance. We are fortunate that His Excellency Ambassador Al-Mualami is the chairman of the advisory board, which provides strategic guidance to the center, including in terms of the development and implementation of our current 5-year program of work. Last year, we held the first high-level meeting of advisory board in Riyadh with the UN Secretary General participation. And it was, again, very important event which creates additional impetus for development of the office. In line with the strategic guidance of the advisory board, we have implemented numerous projects that have had strong impact at the global, regional, and national levels. We are now considering projects into global, we are now consolidating projects into global programs that allow UNCCT to offer practical technical assistance to more than 70 countries. So we are working on the invitation of 70 governments in different parts of the world. And I think it's also a very significant achievement of the last 3 years, because we started in 2011. We did reach a very good result for the beginning of the work of the Office of Counterterrorism. But starting from this period of time, we doubled our engagement in different countries. So I think it's the result of the development of the center as a part of the Office of Counterterrorism. Allow me to mention now a few good examples of our work in different countries. The center is currently implementing 38 projects at global, regional, and national levels. They cover a broad range of priority areas, including preventing violent extremism as and when conducive to terrorism, addressing the foreign terrorist fighters phenomenon, developing regional counter-terrorist strategy, countering financing of terrorism, border security and management, cyber and new technologies, South-South cooperation, chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear terrorism, human rights and support for victims of terrorism. One of our flagship global initiatives is support for victims of terrorism. The Counterterrorist Center is the lead organizer of the International Day of Remembrance of and Tribute to the Victims of Terrorism, which we observe on 21st of August. We organized a commemoration ceremony this year and photo exhibition opened by the Secretary General. And it was really very important events to draw attention of the international community to the issue of the victims. It's going on about tens of thousands of people, which needs to be supported from medical point of view, from social point of view. Many of them are stigmatized. Of course, it's a very sensitive story for many, many countries, but it's our humanitarian responsibility to reflect the needs of this category of people, because it's going on about prevention, it's going on about resilient societies, and the voices of victims from this perspective are very important. This is a very strong tool against terrorism propaganda, and I think we need to support more and more this category of people. Next year we are planning to organize the first Global Victims Congress in New York, and we count on support from the Saudi side, and I think we will get this support because, again, the mission of Saudi Arabia in New York is very engaged in this kind of activities. NIFU University is a member of the working group of the Arab Interior Ministers Council and will be a key partner in our endeavor to support countries in the region to develop their national and regional strategies. I think it's also very important. You know, there is a lack of legislation in many countries on counterterrorism. And this kind of practical engagement with your participation, with NIFU University participation in creation of this global legal network, how to deal with terrorism, what is the legal base to be used in counterterrorism activities, is really very important, because without strong legal framework, again, it's very difficult to be effective in countering terrorism. Last but not least, we have extended our practical support to numerous member states at the national level. For example, in Nigeria, UNCCT worked to enhance airport security. I was in this airport, And I was asked to continue this training program not only for Nigeria, but to spread these training activities to the neighboring countries and to the whole African continent. Because people learned from the very beginning how to deal with this issue and how to prevent starting from airports. And the first results, as I was told, were very surprising. These law enforcement officers trained by our counterterrorist center managed to open many details in the luggages of different passengers, like, for example, gold, and stopped contraband simultaneously with the prevention action. So this is a multifaceted approach, and I think we need to continue with this kind of technical trainings. In Pakistan, we trained managers of technical and vocational education and training schools on prevention of violent extremism. In Jordan, we are working with NATO and the Jordanian armed forces to develop CBRN response plan, because still the issue of proliferation of dangerous materials to the hands of terrorists is really very important, because if we would like to mitigate these threats, we need to, again, to be prepared to the appearance, and we need to create a very strong facilities to prevent proliferation of these materials. And in Tunisia and other countries, we have trained law enforcement officials in human rights. In the Philippines, Indonesia, and Malaysia, we're assisting governments with their strategic communications. And this is the work of UNCCT, the capacity building activities for the interests of the member states. The Global Counterterrorism Coordination Compact, the UN Coordination Framework on Counterterrorism, that is implemented through my office, is also developing. I mentioned the number of entities of the United Nations involved in the activities of Global Coordination Compact, 41. To coordinate this big number of entities is not a very easy task, but again, with the support of the center, we are doing this kind of job. And we are developing a lot of important interagency projects because of this coordination compact arrangement in areas such as counterterrorism narratives, biometric information, protection of critical infrastructure, and countering financing of terrorism. In all of this work, it's critical for us to ensure that we respond to the needs of member states. It's, again, the motto of my office and the center to reflect the needs of the member states, because we can't impose. We could work only in a collective manner. We need to have a support with the recipient country. We need to have the understanding what we are doing together. We are currently reviewing our accomplishments and developing a vision for a future work of UNCCT. Under the able guidance of the advisory board, we will continue to utilize the generous contributions from Saudi Arabia to further enhance our efforts to transform the United Nations Counterterrorism Center into a center of excellence. It was the original idea of the establishment of the Counterterrorism Center to serve as a center of excellence. Now we have the necessary capacities. Now we are prepared to this transformation. And again, in this constant dialogue with the Saudi colleagues and friends, we are preparing a concept idea how to make the new step and to establish a physical center of excellence in New York in order to share best experience, in order to serve for exchange of information on countering terrorism, in order to invite the best practitioners to present their options, how to deal with terrorist threat, and so on and so forth. So a combination of scientific approach and practical approach. And I think it will be the new quality of the center's activities. So I think the university could be also a part of this discussion, and I count on a valuable contribution to this discussion and to a final product as well. In my visits to Saudi Arabia, I have always been impressed by the significant expertise and good practices you have developed in various institutions. As Executive Director of UNCCT, I want to do more to leverage this expertise and to provide a platform to share it with the broader international community. And it's going on about the Center of Excellence. Facilitating South-South cooperation is one of the key endeavors at UNCCT. Naif University has useful experience to share in this regard in light of your Pan-Arabic mission. I would like to explore if we could strengthen our collaboration in this critical area. Experts say, to defeat a network, you need a network. So to defeat terrorist networks, we will require a counter-terrorism network. With this idea in mind, we are currently identifying strategic partners to collaborate. Given the outstanding work that you are doing at the Naif University, I want to explore how we leverage and share your experience and expertise through UNCCT. You come from positions in your national authorities where you are addressing the threat of terrorism on a daily basis. I therefore look forward to our discussion today on how we can use better UNCCT and how UNCCT could continue more effectively to respond to your needs. And it was a very important question for us. How do you see the future role of the United Nations in countering terrorism? And how do you see the global needs that UNCCT can respond to? I want to make sure that when you graduate and return to your positions, you can look at UNCCT as a center of excellence you can engage with. We need to unite to counter terrorism, to achieve our ultimate goal, a future without terrorism. I would like to thank Dr. Albanyan for hosting me, and thank you for your engagement and attention. Thank you very much.
شكرا سعادة الوكيل على الإحاطة النيرة عن جهود المركز في مجال مكافحة الإرهاب. إذا تسمحون لي، إذا في تساؤلات إذا ممكن تكتب وتعطى الإخوان الزملاء، الله يعافيكم. ونبغى نعرض الآن فيلم قصير عن مركز الأمم المتحدة لمكافحة الإرهاب. Hope you're gonna enjoy. إن شاء الله تستمتعون فيه.
Terrorism is a global evolving threat, and no country can tackle it alone. The United Nations Counterterrorism Center, UNCCT, was established in 2011 with a significant contribution of the government of Saudi Arabia to support member states in countering terrorism and preventing violent extremism when conducive to terrorism.
The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is proud to be the founding and main donor of the United Nations Counterterrorism Center. Only by coming together within the global community can we defeat terrorism. The United Nations Counterterrorism Center Advisory Board provides strategic guidance and ensures that the center remains responsive to the needs of member states. As terrorist methods and threats evolve, the United Nations Center for Counterterrorism will therefore also evolve in the coming years. And as chairman of the advisory board, I look forward to support the strengthening of UNCCT as a center of excellence.
The original Saudi contribution has had a multiplier effect over the years. attracting an increasing number of donors committed to working together to support UNCCT efforts to help member states implement the 4 pillars of United Nations Global Counterterrorism Strategy. The result? Stronger international cooperation to fight terrorism.
Nigeria has had a long-standing and positive relationship with the UNCCT since its establishment. We have worked closely together on key issues such as aviation security, border security and management, promoting peace and education, strengthening criminal justice capacity to counter terrorism, training and capacity building of law enforcement officials on human rights, the rule of law, and the prevention of terrorism, and terrorist use of nuclear materials. In all of these projects, UNCCT has worked closely with my country and honorable parts of the United Nations system to deliver sound results. We look forward to the continued good cooperation with UNCCT in the next years in our common fight against the scourge of terrorism.
UNCCT is supporting member states and regional organizations by promoting international cooperation and providing capacity building assistance in areas such as countering the financing of terrorism, developing strategies to counter terrorism and preventing violent extremism, promoting human rights while countering terrorism, addressing cybersecurity, foreign terrorist fighters, CBRN, border security, and terrorist travel. In June 2017, through General Assembly Resolution 71/291, UNCCT became part of the new United Nations Office of Counterterrorism, UNOCT, led by Under-Secretary General Mr. Vladimir Foronkov.
Since its establishment, UNCCT has provided extensive and impactful counterterrorism assistance to member states at their request. As Executive Director of UNCCT, I am committed to ensuring its continued development as a center of excellence that member states can draw on for world-class and cutting-edge expertise in their efforts to prevent and counter terrorism.
The establishment of UNOCT was part of the Secretary General's reform of the UN Peace and Security Architecture. The goal was to enhance the global efforts to counter terrorism through an all-of-UN approach led by UNOCT under the umbrella of the Global Counterterrorism Coordination Compact, counting more than 40 entities. Through its location within UNOCT, UNCCT has greatly benefited from this reform. Member states have strongly supported the reform, and as a result, the UN Counterterrorism Center has continued to expand its partnerships and increase its donor base.
Terrorism is a phenomenon that affects all countries, and internationally it goes beyond borders, and international cooperation is therefore vital in addressing it. And here, the European Union and the UN Office for Counterterrorism are key partners. We work closely with the Counterterrorism Center on capacity building programs throughout the world in areas such as preventing violent extremism, addressing the threat of nuclear terrorism, and tackling radicalization in prisons. By strengthening this partnership with the United Nations and working with civil society, we're jointly contributing to deliver real results and concrete impact on the ground.
Since it became operational in 2012, the UN Counterterrorism Center has seen a continuous and significant expansion in its work. By 2018, the center had supported member states with more than 80 programs and projects at the global, regional, and national level. Today, it continues to expand to meet the growing demands for counterterrorism technical assistance. In Central Asia, UNCCT collaborated with United Nations Regional Center for Central Asia, UNRCCA, on the development and the implementation of the Joint Plan of Action of the United Nations Global Counterterrorism Strategy for the region.
The United Nations Regional Center for Preventive Diplomacy for Central Asia has a close working relationship with the Counterterrorism Center of the United Nations Office for Counterterrorism. Since 2011, we have been conducting a wide range of capacity building activities with the 5 Central Asian states in such areas as border management and border security, countering the financing of terrorism and money laundering, the role of media, religious leaders, and the root causes of threats and challenges to the security of the Central Asian states in the field of terrorism and extremism. These activities have contributed to improved professional skills to combat such threats, but they also led to increased interaction, cooperation, and trust among the Central Asian states, the regional partner organizations, and the United Nations.
The Center promotes a holistic, all-of-society approach and encourages the participation of civil society, youth, and women in the global efforts to counter terrorism and prevent violent extremism. Supporting victims of terrorism is also at the heart of UNCCT's work.
Since the attack in Jakarta happened in 2004, I have been a strong advocate for victims of terrorism. I am proud to be collaborating with the United Nations Center for Counterterrorism in its work related to the victims. The UNCCT Good Practices Handbook to Assist Victims Associations in Asia Pacific, which I am helping to develop. It's important as it will provide guidance to promote victims' rights and to better support and care for their needs.
Constantly evolving, the terrorism threat requires even more innovative and cutting-edge solutions. Benefiting from the guidance of its 22 advisory board members, UNCCT strives to develop as a center of excellence, providing global good practice to help member states address and counter the threat of terrorism and violent extremism. The center will also continue to provide well-coordinated counterterrorism capacity-building assistance that allows states to implement the global counterterrorism strategy in a balanced manner.
In that context, the United Nations Counterterrorism Center has also stepped up its efforts to meet the growing expectations and demands from countries most affected by terrorism. I'm grateful to Ambassador Al-Mualimi of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for his able chairmanship of the Center's advisory board. Let us all pledge to continue to work together in pragmatic and innovative ways to address serious threats to international peace and security. Thank you.
أتمنى أنكم استمتعتوا بالفيلم القصير. الحقيقة وصلتني كل التساؤلات، وهذا ينم أنه كان في تفاعل من الأخوة والأخوات الحضور، لكن اعذروني إذا ما وصل الدور يعني لسؤال معين منكم لضيق الوقت، فإذا تعطوني يعني الصلاحية أن أختار بعض الأسئلة. السؤال الأول لمعالي المندوب الدائم، السؤال يقول: المملكة سباقة في التصدي لمكافحة الإرهاب والتطرف، ومن أهمها مركز الأمم المتحدة. ما هو دور وفد المملكة مع المركز وكذلك مع قضايا الأمم المتحدة بشكل عام ذات العلاقة؟
من السائل؟
ما ذكر والله، كلها مكتوب.
أنونيمس.
سم؟
أنونيمس.
إيه كلها ما وضعوا اسماء.
يمكن هذا الستايل حق جامعة نايف الأمنية.
إيه.
يخلو. على كل حال المملكة العربية السعودية دورها أساسي في مكافحة الإرهاب وفي مساعدة الأطراف الدولية والأخرى ومساعدة الدول الصديقة للتصدي للإرهاب في كل مكان. طبعا دور وفد المملكة العربية السعودية هو تمثيل المملكة وإبراز وجهة نظرها في المحافل الدولية وفي المؤتمرات وفي العمل ضمن نطاق المجلس الاستشاري لمركز مكافحة الإرهاب. أما دور المملكة العربية السعودية فهو كما أسلفت يشتمل على دعم هذا المركز الدولي الذي يمتد نشاطه ليغطي عشرات الدول في العالم، بالإضافة إلى أن المملكة قدمت تبرعاً خاصاً لتطوير أجهزة وعمليات مكافحة الإرهاب في دول الساحل في غرب أفريقيا، وبالإضافة إلى ذلك أسهمت في تأسيس مركز لمكافحة الإرهاب الإلكتروني في فيينا في النمسا. فدور المملكة نشيط ومتعدد الأوجه ويسري في مجالات عديدة وفي اتجاهات عديدة، وهو دور نفخر به جميعا، والوفد يفخر بأنه يسعى لتمثيل هذا الدور في نيويورك وفي محافل الأمم المتحدة.
شكرا معاليكم. السؤال الآخر لسعادة وكيل الأمين العام: كيف تقيمون أداء المركز خلال الفترة الماضية، وكذلك زيارتكم لهذه الجامعة العريقة ماذا تأملون منها؟
For this big number of questions, it means that we managed to focus the interest of you on our activities, and it's very important. This is one of the results of the visiting of the university, to show that we are doing our job, to explain how we are doing this job, and to provoke you for thinking, because we need to use your contribution of practitioners in our work, and contributions from the practitioners from the Middle East countries. It's a very important region of the world, and your contribution, of course, is very important for us to understand what should be done with regard to this very issue. Speaking about the role of the center, role of the center is really to help countries to build up their own capacities. Ambassador Al-Mualami mentioned the African angle of activities of the center. Now there is a demand of a number of member states from African continent to help them to build up the counterterrorism capacity, because the government is not able to create these capacities by itself. So they are asking us to share with them the best possible experience from all parts of the world, and we have this information. We could send also trainers to make this job effectively. So I think it's very practical engagement. We are not speaking about theoretical things. We are speaking about how to help member states in development of capacity building activities against terrorism and in prevention of violent extremism, and so on and so forth. And practical, result-oriented approach, this is our philosophy.
Thank you, Mr. Fورونكوف. السؤال الأخير لمعالي رئيس الجامعة: كيف ترون تأثير مثل هذه الندوة وكذلك تعاونكم المستقبلي مع الأمم المتحدة في مجال مكافحة الإرهاب؟
شكرا. الحقيقة في البداية يعني أكرر شكري وتقديري للسيد وكيل الأمين العام لمكافحة الإرهاب على هذه الكلمة المهمة والضافية، والتي أعتقد بإذن الله أنها يعني حملت في طياتها الكثير من الأفكار المهمة جدا لتعميق العلاقة الاستراتيجية فيما بين الجامعة بإذن الله ومكتب مكافحة الإرهاب في الأمم المتحدة بالنسبة لنا في الجامعة. وكما أحط السيد وكيل الأمين العام بأننا خلال عملنا على إعداد الخطة الاستراتيجية للجامعة الجديدة وضعنا مجال مكافحة الإرهاب كأولوية، وهو استمرار لما كانت الجامعة عليه على مدار العقود السابقة لأهميته. وقد تم إطلاق طبعا هذا العام دبلوم جديد في مجال مكافحة الإرهاب، ونتمنى بإذن الله أن تكون هذه الزيارة انطلاقة جديدة وتعزيز العلاقة القائمة وتحويلها بإذن الله إلى مجالات أوسع وآفاق أكبر، بما يعود بإذن الله بالنفع على الجهتين. وشكرا جزيلا.
شكرا، الله يحفظكم. في الختام أود أن أشكر معالي رئيس الجامعة ومعالي المندوب الدائم وسعادة الوكيل ومدير المركز على الحضور والتحدث، والشكر مرة أخرى لمعالي رئيس الجامعة والزملاء الأعزاء وأنتم الحضور على التفاعل المتميز. واسمحوا لنا معالي رئيس الجامعة سيقدم دروع للمتحدثين الأفاضل.